Alright guys, Mouse here, and today let's talk about Yuqi, the new HP scaling Firebreaker. Is she going to replace Esil? How useful is she really, and is she worth pulling for? We'll break all that down in this video. I'll cover her skills and debuffs, show you guild boss test results, compare her with Esil in dungeons, give my thoughts on Power of Destruction, and my overall analysis and evaluation of this unit. And before we begin, just a quick reminder, don't forget to support me in the SLA Content Creator Program. Thank you so much, and let's begin. So her most important skill is the breakdown debuff, up to 20% increased damage taken and 25% increased fire damage taken at A5. Unlike the previous ones we featured that turned out to be scams like the Allen's Orb, Shuwa, Mini, Soyon, this one is confirmed as true elemental damage taken, so it is gonna be really strong. It's very easy to trigger, just 3 hits from basic skills, and it's lasting up to 30 seconds at A5. You can't extend the duration with more basic skills, but her ultimate can refresh it, and when I did a quick test in the guild boss, the downtime was only less than 20 seconds for the entire duration of the fight. Isil's numbers are still higher on paper, maximum of 30% each, but the problem here is that the activation is much slower and inconsistent in some cases, like for example in POD. Also, in game modes with only one or no break gauge, which is the worst thing for her, its usefulness cannot be maximized. So in that regard, Yuqi is a more reliable debuffer. Yuqi also has this afterglow buff that you can proc after using the ultimate. This is on A3. It adds basic and ultimate skill damage. It's gonna be nice for the fire DPS, but keep in mind there will be diminishing returns if you're already running Infamy set or stacked similar multipliers. For Jinwoo though, specifically, it's gonna be a great buff for Dagger Toss, which does not have any skill type percent multipliers aside from the usual 2-piece Infamy and Boss Slayer that we use. On top of that, she also adds 12% break state damage, which of course will be useful in POD. However, I recently tested Gotoryuji's version and I found out that this is also additive to skill damage percent, so it will still be diminished a lot. With regards to her gameplay, there's no problem at all. Very smooth, fun, and actually very easy to execute. You just need to use basic skill core, then ultimate. She's very tanky too and has extreme evasion on her skills, so she feels very safe to play, even though she does not have shield for herself. Now let's check the test results in the guild boss, and by the way, these tests are not the full meta test, and there's a different strategy used now in the guild boss, which is going to be the Jinwoo DPS. So this is just a controlled setup to see how her debuffs and buffs affect team damage, so that you will have an idea on how much impact you're expecting to the overall damage if you include her in the team. And also, just to remind you guys that when I do these tests, I always try to minimize the RNG as much as I can, and you will see in most of my tests the variance in damage is not going to be far off, so don't worry about that. And I always take time to use the best methods I know and spend lots of time doing this, from planning to data gathering. That's why you guys see a lot of these tests. Most of the time there will be multiple test attempts. Now moving on, for team A with Esil, Kanae hit about 6 billion damage. This is with a successful break, and Esil about 1 billion damage. And next test is replacing Esil with Yuqi with only A9 advancement and A6 weapon. Kanae's damage dropped to 4.5 to 4.8 billion, but Yuqi herself hit 1.9 billion. It really shows that she actually can deal good damage, and that's huge, especially since she was only using the grid set here. So if we use the Desire set and get enough crit, she'll probably scale even higher. So you might be wondering why Kanae's damage dropped. Does that mean Yuqi is actually weaker as a buffer? Not necessarily, actually. Just to give you some explanation, so this is just my hypothesis. Overall, Yuqi's debuff values are lower, right? And in this guild boss combat flow, Esil stacks catch up after Kanae's passive procs after the second break, where most of the damage will happen. However, I feel like the big thing here is that this guild boss, similar to Fact Na, favors penetration. I haven't checked all of these in detail yet, but that's what I see at least from those who already ran the Fire Element team, especially using the Night Killer. So I think it's safe to assume that penetration is gonna be the king here in this guild boss. So that being said, I also do expect that in the case where penetration is not gonna be impactful, like for example in the Ant Queen, when we're using defense decrease stacking with Choi, it's probably gonna be a different story, and Esil might not be the best option. So I also tried using Yuqi just as debuffer in Team B, replacing Chahe-in, and the overall damage spiked as expected. Not just from her debuff though, but also because she adds an additional fire unit count for Esil and Kana SA4. Compared to Soyeon though, who barely contributes in Team B, Yuqi still added value after replacing a solid debuffer like Chahe-in. So Yuqi basically, in my opinion, feels like having two Esils in the team. So overall, in the guild boss, she's gonna be very impressive. For the workshop, I did not try anymore because I don't have keys, but since Esil was built for it, she has a break bonus and penetration stacking is strong here as you have already seen before. I would expect that Esil will still perform very well. In places like Anchor Dungeon, Esil actually struggles in these kinds of situations. Not only that she is slow to break, but with only one break gauge, she cannot max out her stacks. Yuqi, on the other hand, smashes these situations. Her break is almost instant, her debuff is immediate, and she's tanky enough to just spam without dodging. So in terms of gameplay, she is much more comfortable to play. So overall, aside from workshop, and especially in single break or no break content, and of course against monsters with low defense, Yuqi will likely outshine Esil. Now for Power of Destruction, again, we cannot test it. Of course, we don't have the Fire Week yet. But what I can say is that in POD, Esil is actually terrible because her stacks usually fly around and it's not hitting the head all the time. Her damage is also low and penetration does not matter much since we use Shadow Step and Bloodlust here, and POD's defense is not that high either. So although we haven't tested this yet, I have a feeling Yuqi will play better here because she adds break state damage. She also boosts basic skills, ultimate damage for Kanae, crit damage, and can also debuff the hands for faster breaks. And on top of that, of course, she can also deal more damage herself that will help to break the hands. My only worry though is that if her cooldowns don't line up after handbrake and fail to inflict the debuff on the head fast enough, that could be very problematic in actual combat. But overall, in terms of team buff in these situations, she seems much more promising here than Esil, whose attack buff is not too impressive, especially for expert set users, and penetration against monsters with already defense decreased is not ideal. Now, just quickly for the builds, it's pretty simple. It's just greed or desire most of the time. If you want more DPS, you can just use Obsidian or Destructive Instinct, depending on the situation. And for the cores, it's gonna be Eyes of the Watcher because she spams core attacks. There's no power gauge or MP issues, so any core I feel is gonna be fine. So should you pull Yuqi? I think for the guild boss, yes, I would recommend her. Even at A1, I think she's a great debuffer. It's gonna be able to free up units like Cha or Libora for other teams. And at A3, she gains more DPS. It's gonna be faster power gauge, and of course, the extra buff Afterglow. And at A5, her debuff lasts longer. It will probably make her more consistent. Overall, she's not replacing Esil here. I think she's just gonna be another Esil. In dungeons though, I hate playing Esil because she's too squishy as an attack unit and we spend too much effort to dodge to increase the stacks and deal more break damage. So in dungeons overall, I think Yuqi is still gonna be my personal pick. And for POD, she still has not been fully tested yet, but based on her kit, it looks promising for both Kana and Jinwoo. So I'm looking forward to play it in the Fire Week. So I'll just update you on that once it comes. Yeah, that's my breakdown of Yuqi. If this helped you out, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.